Hi, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, episode 127. Happy New Year, 2023. We're back for another year of talking hitting and baseball and teaching you all about hitting and the game of baseball. Episode 127. Thanks for joining us. Our topic today, first topic of 2023, our first episode back after a short break: bat speed and bat quickness. Which one is more important? We're going to talk about some measurables today. We've got a lot of information that we are going to decipher through and discuss. Bat speed, bat quickness. I'm looking forward to it. Let me bring in the guy I couldn't do this without, my friend, co-host, professional evaluator, successful business owner, Jake Epstein. What's going on there, sir?
Getting ready to talk about bat quickness
Yes,
and
we
bat
are.
speed.
I have an opinion on this because I've done my research. I'm not saying or insinuating that you haven't, because you certainly have, and you are an expert. But I think, I'm just going to go right for it here, and then we'll talk about more later. I believe, though, with bat speed and bat quickness, if you don't have bat quickness, the bat speed that you may have or may not have at the end doesn't really matter. I don't know.
Yeah, my dad used to say before there were any measurables, he used to say, you got to have bat quickness. If you don't have bat quickness, you're not going to have bat speed.
Mhm.
So you gotta use science to get it going. That's kind of the main thing. You got to use big muscles to pull small muscles, and you have to decelerate big muscles at the right time to accelerate small muscles. So there's a lot that goes into it, but all that data can be skewed. Where are you on plane? Is your bat speed really good, but you don't really ever barrel the ball up? There's a lot that goes into that final. Am I a good hitter? So it'll be fun to kind of dig into that today.
I do want to discuss with you and just get your opinion on Rafael Devers as a hitter. Of course, if people don't know, the Red Sox finally signed somebody this offseason after letting Bogarts go. And
We
I
got
mean,
Turner.
they did pick up Turner, right? It's a good point. They did pick up Justin Turner, but they signed Rafael Devers, another $300+ million guy. I have an opinion on this, and I will discuss it down the line on maybe another different podcast project that we'll discuss later on down the line that I'll be doing on
Yeah.
my own this time. But I just want to get your opinion. Rafael Devers, what do you think of him as a hitter? I think he's kind of whippy. I'll never
Yeah.
forget when he came up in August of 2017. Do you remember that first game, or one of his first games? He had a home run off of Aroldis Chapman on Sunday Night
Mhm.
Baseball. Took a 100+ mile per hour pitch into the bullpen in left center. So you knew that this guy had something. I think it's sort of a risk for the Red Sox. 300 million. Maybe you could have given that to Betts, although at the time the financials were in question because of the pandemic and the loss of money and financials within the game of baseball. But what are your thoughts? Rafael Devers as a hitter now going forward, he's the centerpiece for the Red Sox.
Yeah, he's a quality hitter. I will say I haven't watched a ton of his stuff.
Mhm.
I haven't seen him play a whole lot. What I have seen is a guy that plays the game. He reminds me of the guy in Cleveland a lot.
Jose Ramirez.
Jose Ramirez, and I don't know if it's their build or what, or the way they play the game, or their positions, but he does kind of remind me of that. He's obviously not a switch hitter, but the numbers don't lie. Guy puts up quality numbers year in and year out, and yeah, I mean he hasn't been in the league for that long, but from what he's done at the big league level, he's right around 300 probably, and hits home runs and drives in runs. If his defense, and that's what I don't know, on the defensive side, if his defense is where it is, then hey, you pretty much have to lock guys up now, it seems like, until they're 40 something years old. Seems to be the way. Nobody wants to retire at 37 anymore, even though they could probably make more money with a short-term deal. And then you just have guys kind of wearing out the rest of their career, still making money. So I don't know if the longevity will pay off, but I would say for the next 5 years, it sure will.
So looking up some of his defensive, or trying to anyway, some of his
Hmm.
defensive statistics, I think he's gotten better over the past few years, because there was a
Hmm.
point there where he just was not very good over there at third base
Yeah.
defensively, probably from around 2019 to 2020. So last year, playing third base, here's a good number for you. He played in 138 games, started 137 at third base. So there is some longevity there, at least in this part of his career, where he can
Hmm.
play a good amount of games at third base. Okay, let's see here.
And
The
how
amount
old
of
is he?
error.
28, maybe 27?
He made 14 errors last year. He was born in 1996. They don't say his age. 26. He's 26 years old.
Okay.
So by the
So
time
that's
that
a good contract, right? What was it, 10 or 11 years?
I think it was around 10 or 11 years. So
Yeah.
it's a good deal.
Yeah.
He only made 14 errors last year.
Yeah.
Much better than the 22 he made in 2021. He made 22 in 2019, made 24 in 2018. So to your point, defensively,
Yeah.
he was at one point bordering on being a liability, but not really so much
Yeah.
anymore. He's a good defender, and obviously he can hit both left-handed and right-handed pitching.
Yeah. And he's a third baseman. He's not a
Right.
shortstop. You don't have that kind of pressure and damage on the body. I think that's the whole Correa issue is, I mean, I'm obviously speculating here, but it's probably arthritis, right? There's probably some arthritis that's building up in that ankle that he broke. Um,
You think that's what
I,
it is? Or at
it's
least,
something like that that's going to
yeah.
hurt him later on, or they think it's going to hurt him. I mean, they told me I broke my ankle in 2000. Good Lord, 2000, no, 2000, 1999, right? What is that? 23 years ago, 24 years ago, 23 and a half
23.
years ago, and summer
Yeah.
ball fouled the ball off it. And they're like, oh, you're going to have, really bad arthritis in that foot, and 20 something years later, knock on wood, it's not debilitating yet. It cracks, but it's not painful. And I think that's what they're probably worried about. Something in there is, yes, there's no problem now. He moves just fine, but that contract goes until he's, I don't know, 38, 39, 40 years old. Is he going to be able to still move around and play defense on that foot? I think that's what everybody's concerned about. I don't know if it's his left or right ankle. If it's his left ankle, that's what blocks everything when we hit.
Right.
If we can't push back and stay behind balls, that could create a problem. So that would be my guess. I mean, the fact that he's not limping around and he doesn't have problems, it's something they're foreseeing popping up in 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And nobody knows when that'll happen.
In a way, I'm a little bit relieved that, and I hope Carlos Correa is okay, but I'm relieved that he might not be going to the Mets now, because I think that the Mets have opened up the floodgates, which, they were already weak to begin with. The whole idea of, well, there's a luxury tax and that acts as the game's salary cap, but you just needed that one owner, and the Mets got it for the one guy who's going to pay all this money and not really care about having to pay luxury tax fees.
Yeah. Well, until they win 3 or 4 World Series in a row, I won't worry about it. Because at least that luxury
I
tax,
understand.
goes to, if I'm not mistaken, that money goes to small market teams.
It does. I get it.
AKA, boop, boop.
It's not
Maybe
like
Steve Cohen will kick in a little extra.
I was going to say,
Get a
if
raise. The Brewers staff gets raises.
I think it was maybe it was after the Correa signing. I think Steve Cohen will have to pay $175 million in tax fees.
Yeah.
So he's going to Steve Cohen in a way. If the Brewers, a small market team, for example, if they get that money, some of that money, Steve Cohen theoretically is going to be buying some of their free agents in years to come.
And Pittsburgh and Colorado. I don't know if Colorado is considered a small market team, but
Well, you signed Chris Bryant. I'm not so sure about that. I know how you feel about Colorado. So
I like Chris Bryant a lot too. It was just a bad deal for the Rockies because he got hurt and played 12 games last year. They paid him $1.5 million per game.
They didn't play much.
I know.
Denver sports. What's going on? What happened to Russell Wilson, man? What's in the air out? I know it's in the air out there. What's going on, man? What's in the water out there? What's in the water?
Well, it's now in the water too.
Right.
Seeped into the water.
Hey, Stan's Dr. Steve, SDS, reached out to me. Stan's Dr. Steve, of course, for those who don't know, he has a great academy. He is someone who worked with Ep offensively, of course, years ago. He implements a lot of, I don't want to misspeak for him, but he implements a lot of Ep. I might do it anyway. Sorry. He implements a lot of Ep's teachings, but nevertheless, he has a great academy here in Tampa, Florida. And he reached out to me on Instagram at Jim Tara over the time that we were away and over the new year. And he was working with a player. I won't name who it is, but he was working or still is working with that player. Who is now in winter ball somewhere, maybe in, I don't know where, but he is in winter ball and he had a home run. And we were kind of going back and forth about talking about his swing, and Stan's Dr. Steve was working with him. Anyway, my point being, and this is a lesson for kids, Ep, and you can definitely filter this lesson through as well. You never know who's watching. This person, professional player who Stan's Dr. Steve SDS is working with, that player does not know that I'm watching. And not that that really matters at all, because it doesn't. I'm not saying it does, certainly. But you never know, especially high school players, college, pro, not so much, but high school players. This is a lesson for you. You never know who's watching. There are means of communication that didn't exist when Ep and I played, when Ep and I were in our prime, so to speak. Those modes of communication didn't exist. Stan's Dr. Steve reached out to me on Instagram. Didn't exist back then. So players, especially now, there's a microscope on you even more, and you never know who's watching. That's the first lesson of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, Jake, in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to the whole DiMaggio story way back when. He was 15 years in his career and stretched a single into a double and slid into second base hard. And they said, why'd you do that in a meaningless game? And he said, well, there might be a kid here, somebody here that's never seen me play before. And I want him to know that that's the way I play the game. So, yeah, you never know who's watching. I mean, I could tell you so many stories about college recruiters going to look at one person and somebody else caught their eye, and just being in the right place at the right time. So, yeah. I don't know, STS, you may want to ask Steve if that's okay to,
I didn't say STS. I said
SDS.
Yes.
SDS. Is a DS a doctor of something?
Stan's
DDS, DDS would be a damn. Yeah. So Steve, Schwartz is a great story, because he was my first certified.
You don't think he'll like Stan's Dr. Steve? SDS?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe not.
I'm sorry.
No. Maybe he will. Maybe he will.
I'm gonna get a text from him this week saying, "I love it, Jim."
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm sure he will. Can I finish my story about?
Sorry. Yes. Go ahead.
SDS, please.
Yes.
So he was the first guy who came to certification and said, "Jake, can you do this full time after certification?" And this was his first one. He's gone through a couple. And I was like, wow, Steve, that's a bold prediction to quit your job and doing what you're doing, and then really convert. He wasn't doing lessons or anything prior to that. He was working with his son,
right.
And he got better and better, and he did. He just invested in it. He went full board. He got himself a little cage and started doing lessons and making waves, and now he's got a great academy. He's an excellent instructor, and it just shows you, when you have good information and you put in the time and you love what you do, you work with professional players, even though you weren't a professional player yourself, right? Yeah. Sometimes you just have to be good at what you do and be passionate about it. So to SDS.
That's right. To SDS. Stan's Dr. Steve. Yeah, but that's a lesson in there as well. You go to Ep for certification.
This is true. Like, it's good information. You're going to make players better.
Yeah. So this week on Cross Functionality, Cassie, Riley, Bosha, and I, please subscribe to that podcast as well, Cross-Functionality, for those wondering. We talked about episode 24, training variability, when to do it, why to do it, how to do it, when to implement it. I want to ask you on the hitting side of training variability. And some of this involves chaos training, which is another buzzword, another big topic that has creeped up in the last year or so. Some like it, others don't. And then there's, of course, the vitriol in the middle where people argue about it and seem to really get off on that. But training variability, what is your opinion of it when it comes to hitting, chaos training, all kind of wrapped into one big bow? What's your take on training variability?
It has to be done at the right time. So there's stages of learning, there's stages of competence. There's knowing the player you're working with. You can't just throw players in a situation like that have big swing flaws, because they're going to fail. Then they're going to get frustrated, and then they could possibly quit the game. So you have to cater your environment to the players you're working with. I'll give you an example. I was at the lab last week, just got back, and this was kind of the time of year where I go there and I get to meet a lot of the college players I've worked with over the years, that started training with me when they were 12, and now they're 20 and they're in college. Some of them are 22, by the way. For you old people, you know who I'm talking about. But they're in college. They're preparing for the season. We did allow a couple high school girls in that are very competitive and very good, just so they could be, surrounded by players that are at the top of their peak. So we had, I don't know, I think we had 5 baseball and 6 softball players, something like that, and we treat them. So we go through and I train them and see where everybody is and what are we working on? What do you need to work on? Okay, go work on this, go work on this. Let's get your knee here, your foot here, your arm here. And then towards the end of the training, it's 3 days, so it's like, 3 hours a day. So
Mhm.
towards the end, then we start getting them ready, right? Okay, the swings look good. We've covered what we need to cover. Now let's bounce from this cage. Let's take 2 swings on a changeup, 2 swings on a fastball. Let's bounce here. Let's go 1 swing off a curveball, then bounce into this machine that's throwing, high spin fastballs. And so we kind of do that. And then I'll do some drills where they're not comfortable, right? They're moving their feet a little too much, where it's almost a fun drill. I started working on it with Viv actually about a month ago. It's like a little shuffle drill,
Mhm.
but it makes you react because if you get a slide step or something like that, somebody has a quick delivery, and sometimes in softball they'll go a little quicker too with their windup. But sometimes you got to be able to react and move a little bit faster than you're used to. And so we'll kind of adjust timing, and I'll try to mess them up with different timing mechanisms and different speeds. And it just tells me if their body can get into position. We don't want to do that too much where it creates problems, but it definitely forces the player to organize their body the right way to get to certain pitches. And that would be the chaos training, how I use it. And I think it's very beneficial. I just think it has to be beneficial. It has to be used at the right time. If we were using
Sure.
it on 10-year-old kids, probably not going to be super beneficial for them. They're going to be better served, making sure that their rhythm and timing is starting on time.
What do you make of training variability when it comes to implementing it? What time to implement it? Is it every 8 to 12 weeks? They always say that when you're working out in the gym, you should
Mhm.
give yourself at least 8 to 12 weeks for that workout, go through it so your body can adapt a little bit. A little bit different, obviously, when it comes to hitting, when it comes to baseball and softball. But when do you implement, how often do you implement that training variability?
I would sometimes, depending on the player, I'll implement it for 5 minutes of an hour lesson,
Mhm.
or it could be every single week I implement it. For other players, it could be once a quarter because they're just not ready for it yet. Maybe it's not, we're not getting ready for the season. Maybe it's wintertime, maybe it's November, December, January, and we're working mechanics. Well, I'm not going to implement any kind of crazy stuff until, before the season's starting. And that's when I'm going to really kind of hammer in some different variables in terms of timing and reaction. So I would say it definitely depends on the player and what that player needs, and that's kind of the root of everything that Epstein hitting is all about. It's taking a player and assessing that player and what does that player need more than anything else. Like I said, I had 9 or 10 players in Texas, and they all needed to work on something different. I focused on what they needed to be better, not what the group needed to be better. And I think as a quality coach, that's what you have to do. You have to understand personalities, you have to understand swings, you have to understand strengths and weaknesses. And when you can put all that together and train a player, that player is going to be, hopefully the best that they can be.
All right. Well, be sure to subscribe to Cross Functionality. Again, that was our topic this week: training variability. So please subscribe. Apple, Google, Spotify. Cassie Riley, Bosha, and I, former national champion at the University of Alabama on the softball side. So please do indeed subscribe to that podcast. Okay. Let's get into our topic today: bat speed, bat quickness, episode 127. Your father said this years ago, and he said this in his book.
Hmm.
He said that when it comes to bat speed, a guy swinging, and by the way, for full context purposes, when you see somebody on TV, Major League Baseball, a hitter, with the exception of, say, a Bryce Harper or I don't know, somebody who has really, really quick bat speed, Major
Bo
League
Jackson.
players,
I saw a Bo Jackson clip on Twitter, and I
yeah,
was like, "Good lord,
okay, him,
that bat was moving."
Gary Sheffield,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But with the exception of those guys, major league players, when announcers say, well, he has great bat speed, analysts say, well, he has great bat speed. What they really mean is that that player has great bat quickness. Bat speed, guys swinging the bat at about 77 to 78 miles per hour on average, maybe a little bit
Well,
more because
some guys are more. Yep.
some guys are more because players have evolved. But overall, in general, when it comes to bat speed and bat quickness, it's how quick you can get your hands bat quickness from the launch position on plane and to the point of contact. But if you swing the bat fast, but you don't do any of those other things, it doesn't really matter in the end, right?
For sure. Yeah. So let me let me tell you just something I saw this morning actually.
Hmm.
So I was training up one of the players in Texas who's very electric. This was a younger player, okay, not a
Hmm.
college player, and her bat speed is probably on a blast motion sensor, right? Her
Hmm.
bat speed was like 72 to 74,
Hmm.
which is unbelievably fast for we'll call this player 15 years old. Okay, might still be
That is
14
very
actually.
fast.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and her exit velocity, however, was consistently 73, 74. So it wasn't matching how great her bat speed was because her barrel was in and out of the zone for a long time and she didn't square it up real often. Okay, or often enough. I mean, in front toss, yeah, but in a game, it's going to be a little bit tougher. So it's like super. If you just looked at that number, you're like, holy cow. Now, I don't know where that number is. Okay, so where does it reach 74 miles an hour? And I was blown away actually when I saw that number. Like, where is it? Is it in her follow through? Is it way, way out in front? Does she do something special with her hands at the end of the swing point? I don't know. Then I turned on, I don't know, Twitter had this girl hitting, and I don't know if this was a real number, but she said that her exit velocity, I think it may have been a former professional player or trainer or something like that. She
Hmm.
hit a ball a softball 88 miles an hour. Well, that's one of the hardest softballs I've ever seen hit, just so you know. Like softballs, if you can be in the 80-mile-an-hour club, you're a top Division 1 like power hitter if you're like 82, 83. Okay. So this girl said she hit at 88, and she may have. She's strong and really nice swing. And then it said her bat speed was, she maxed out at 66 miles an hour. And I'm like,
Interesting.
66 miles an hour to hit a ball 88, I'm like, that's a good ball. That's a quality, that's some that's some kind of really hot ball to be able to have that. But regardless, even if she only hit at 80 miles an hour at 66, why can she hit the ball, 10 to 15 miles an hour harder than someone swinging a bat 74 miles an hour, right? So
Hmm.
it has to do with consistency. It has to do with, can you barrel balls up, and then if your bat speed is really fast too early in the zone, like a lot of players, if you cast, you'll get a reading really high early in the swing. So when you hit the ball to like right field when you're late, that's your highest bat speed, and then you'll decelerate because your body. So you have to look at all these variables. So what I look at is at the front toes, at the front foot, what is your bat speed and how long did it take you to get there? So bat quickness, if again we're talking about a blast or any other sensor device, what is your bat quickness? Most major leaguers are 0.15 to 0.16 from when they launch their swing to when they make contact. Okay. So, what if you make contact at your back hip because you're late and you're hitting the ball to right field? Well, your bat quickness might be 0.14 seconds. Wow, you were the quickest person to the ball, but then all of a sudden your bat speed might be 6 miles an hour less than it would be at your front toes. So it doesn't do you any good to be have great bat quickness and no speed with it. So a proper swing, if you have good mechanics, typically your barrel's going to reach maximum speed right around your front toes, maybe an inch or two in front, depends on how wide you are. So you have to be consistent with your readings. If you can be, what I try to get my amateur players, if you can get to be zero point 0.1, and these are non-pros, right? So 0.16 seconds. Okay, that used to be major league average. 0.16 seconds at your front toes, and you have decent bat speed, okay, depending on your age, then everything is really good. If your bat speed doesn't reach full speed until 4 or 5 inches in front of your front toes, well, then your swing plane may be off. You may be swinging down too much, and again, that doesn't play right. You might cut under balls or miss balls, and then vice versa. If you dump your barrel and accelerate too quickly, I would say, meaning I don't want to say the snap it is bad because there is some of that, but if you're trying to get on plane like at your back hip or back
Hmm.
foot, typically what happens is you'll go below the pitch plane and then you won't be as consistent out by your front knee. So there's so many variables that play in here. And quite honestly, you have to max out what you do. What what is the purpose of Epstein hitting? What is the purpose of me? Is it, for every professional player I work with, or for every player that I'm doing my scouting work, whether it's a Team USA player or it's an international player or whatever it is, I'm working with 25 to 50 that are 10 to, well, probably not 10, 12 to 16, 17 years old, that are just regular players that want to play high school baseball. Okay. And that's what I want to do. I
Yeah.
want kids to play the game. I want kids to enjoy their game. Softball, baseball, I don't care. So I'm not going to get electric players, everybody that walks in the door that has these crazy abilities. So I have to find a way to maximize what their body and their athleticism is capable of doing. And that's where you find bat quickness, right? That's where, how can we be the most efficient? I'm going to let you jump in here and then I'll get back to bat quickness. But, again, we're treating everybody as an individual, and
Mhm.
how can we maximize that person?
Well, okay, so there's a lot of ambiguity when it comes to bat speed and
Yes.
bat quickness, right?
Yes.
The one thing I want to ask you, you mentioned a little bit in there with blast motion, some of the measurables. How can we measure bat quickness if there is such, if we can do that? I'm not sure that blast
Yeah.
motion can do that. We can, right? Okay.
Yeah. It's
How can
from
we
launch to contact, essentially, is
okay.
bat quickness. Yep.
How can we measure bat quickness and come up with some sort of plan based off those measurements to improve bat speed? I'm not saying that you should swing the bat slow either, by the way. I want to make that clear.
Yeah.
But the goal to try and the sole goal of trying to swing a bat at 95 miles per hour
Hmm.
is not a feasible one. And it's not something that's going to get you better. But we can combine the two. And I wonder how we can filter and go through that, kind of consolidate everything and do it through the measurables.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get bat speed by having good mechanics and using your body and
Hmm.
being strong. So bat speed has to do with, are you strong? Do your muscles move fast? Some players are strong, their muscles don't move fast. They're
Right.
they're not electric or explosive. So you can build that through strength exercises, swinging heavy bats, things like that. But yes, it has to be, just because somebody swings the bat. They used to they used to do bat speed with a radar detector. You would just swing at nothing. You would just swing the bat in space like a dry hack. And
Right.
then it would register the fastest speed of your bat. But it
Hmm.
wasn't barrel speed, it was like the end of the bat. Well, the end of the bat's going to be a lot faster than four or 5 inches from the end of the bat, right? That's where the sweet spot is. So that's the nice part. Blast actually is telling you what is your barrel speed, not the bat. Meaning, like in golf, if I'm swinging a really long club, it'll swing fast than a short club, just because of leverage and length and whip. So it's just, but that's what it was. Oh, we measured, bat speed. For me, honestly, what is the ball doing?
Right.
Right? If you, for instance, if somebody has really good bat speed and it's way out in front and they hit a ball really hard, it's probably a one hopper to the shortstop.
Hmm.
I don't care about a one hopper to the shortstop.
No.
That's not gonna get us a lot of success in the box. So what if we move that ball back, okay, to her front foot or his front foot, and they hit a line drive into the left center field gap because they weren't cheating it. They weren't
Right.
cheating that number, which is every single showcase you go to now. Everybody is cheating a number. They're cheating a throwing number. They can't really cheat. At least when we do our speed stuff, when we do our assessments, at the lab, it's
Mhm.
like laser time. So it doesn't move until they go through the they go through the it's not a stopwatch. It's all done digitally. So
So you're saying that your players don't field a ground ball as if they were at shortstop and then shuffle their feet 8 times
or
and then try to throw as hard as they can.
yes,
Yeah.
right. And it's like, oh,
Showcases are
great.
doing great things for
It's the
kids, I
same
have to
thing as
tell
a
you.
pull down. When people like, why do you
Ugh.
do a pull down? Well, you're doing a pull down to try to throw harder.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming, I'm not a pitching
They don't
coach.
do these things, by the way, and because you scout these
Yeah.
hitters in the Dominican Republic and you internationally. They don't do these things internationally, right? They don't have these type showcases where these coaches say, "Okay, try to throw as hard and let's measure your velocity from short to
Yeah, they
first."
they have
But there's more. It's
showcases,
more
but it's
consolidated,
different.
right? It's different. They're saying, "Okay, don't shuffle your feet 8,000 times."
Correct. And they do have
Yeah.
technology. Like they'll throw a blast on, but
Mhm.
the players aren't manipulating the blast. They're just taking their normal BP
Right.
with the blast. They're not, because you know why? Because scouts are there looking at ball flight too.
Yeah.
and they're like, okay, well, that ball looks good off the bat, and their numbers were this, not what is the number that gets posted to a website, and then random people look at the website and say, oh my gosh, this person's bat speed or exit velocity is 103 miles an hour. Well, they may have
Crazy.
only hit one ball, and it was a
Yeah.
hooked ground ball down the left field line, and it was 103 miles an hour, but they went over 10 in the games that weekend. So there's a lot that we do. But pull downs, getting back to pull downs, that's one of the things. Look, I'm trying to get a number and use the pull down for, and again, I don't know if that's good for you or bad for you. I really don't know. I don't have an opinion on that, but I'm assuming it's to get your body into position to throw hard. Okay. Like
Right.
that's almost like chaos training. If I try to throw hard, my body's probably going to stride the right way. I'm going to, land the right way. I'm going to turn the right, whatever it is. But oh, my pull down was 102. I'm going to put that up. That doesn't make you pitch like, that doesn't mean you're going to throw harder from a regular pitching position, right? It just means that if you sprint halfway down a cage and throw as hard as you can, your arm strength is getting better. So I think for a personal note, it's like, yeah, I'm throwing harder. I feel good. But for somebody to post that and be like, wow, look at me, that doesn't really do it. Throw a bullpen, and if you throw it 98 miles an hour, I'm like, okay, I don't care if his pull down is 93 or 115. You know what I mean? Like he's doing it in the proper environment. So we have to be careful, like anything else. Bat quickness, like I said before, is super important. If you cast the bat, so if you lose your top hand early, typically your bat quickness will be delayed. Okay. If you pre-extend your arm early, your bat speed will be delayed. Now, sometimes I use bat quickness readings on video analysis because my eyes can tell me a lot more than what that sensor is. Some players have like a weird hitch. Okay. They may have a little hitch with their hands. Well, what'll happen is that sensor will think that hitch is the start of the swing. So now all of a sudden I might have a player that shows bat quickness at 0.20 instead of 0.16, and I'm like, well, that's bad, unless they're 10, right? But maybe this person's 16 and they're at 0.2, 0.19, 0.2, and I'm like, what is going on? Their swing looks pretty good. Usually it's they just do something with their hand that accelerates the knob, and then that sensor reacts and says, oh, he's starting his swing. Well, maybe he really didn't start his rotation yet. Maybe it was
Right.
part of his, like Gary Sheffield would be a nightmare for the blast. Okay. Like it's going to have a hard time figuring out where. So sometimes there's that, where it's like it looks like a bad reading. And then sometimes you have a bat quickness reading that's just not great, but the player's 12 years old and they find barrel after barrel after barrel. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to change that. You're 12. You know what's fun when you're 12? Finding barrels,
Yeah.
right? Getting on base, not
Because then you
going
don't
1 for
quit.
10 with a home run, right? Going 6 for 10 with a couple doubles. So, okay, let's get bigger and stronger. Let's see how you progress. Tom House posted something, or one of his people posted something a few months ago, and it was like, you really shouldn't evaluate players until they've all gone through puberty.
Yeah.
And it really is true. Like some people are men at 14 and some aren't. Some don't get to be men until they're 16 or 17. So
Mhm.
you don't know where they're going to be, but you can't compare those two people, and that's usually where it is. That 12 to 14 age, holy cow, you have some people that are just big and strong and fast and through puberty, and then you have some people that are just hanging on, hoping that they don't get cut so that when they do go through puberty in another year or two, um, they're still playing the game. So
Yeah.
be careful. Be careful with all those numbers. Yes, bat quickness, when we're talking about the ball, releases from the hand and hits the glove in, I believe, on average, zero point 0.4 seconds. Okay, so 0.4 seconds on a 90-mile-an-hour fastball.
Yeah.
Hand to glove, right? Ball comes out of hand, hits the catcher's mitt. But as a hitter, our swing takes, roughly 0.16 seconds. Okay, so
Mhm.
that leaves us 0.24 seconds to make up our mind. 0.24 seconds to make up our mind. We also don't hit the ball at the catcher's mitt, right? We hit the ball, I don't know, a few feet from the catcher's mitt. So that means 0.24 is probably 0.22, 0.23. So we got to make up our mind to swing when the ball's 10 to 12 feet from the plate. I mean, there's just not a lot of time, let's be honest. So the quicker you can be, if your bat quickness is 0.18 at your front toes,
Yeah.
okay, and you have a normal load and everything, normal swing, normal hand position. If you're at 0.18 and you can get that to 0.16 at your toes, you're going to be better. You're going to buy yourself 3/100ths of a second more to recognize a pitch. And that's why bat quickness is important. You don't
So,
have to cheat as much.
and your father said this years ago. He said bat speed really isn't all that important if you have a lighter bat. So if you have
Yeah,
bat speed
right.
with a bat that's 27, 28 ounces, okay. But if you have bat speed, and that doesn't really work, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter in the end. But if
doesn't
you
work.
have bat speed with a bat that's say 35 inches, 35 ounces,
Yeah.
okay. Now you can see the correlation. Bat speed and the bat quickness, they're starting to work together because scientifically now you're going with the numbers, with the metrics, and you're using the right equipment.
Yeah, and leverage, right?
Right.
I mean, you swing a bat with mass. It's crazy. I think that's the cool thing that Marucci is at the Performance Lab. Marucci does something that's really cool, and it's really, it's only for big leaguers, but that are Marucci guys. But they put all the stuff on them, and they give them different bats that are different weights and different lengths. It doesn't really work in the whole aluminum or composite, metal bat category, but more end loaded, maybe a heavier knob, to get it, more hand loaded with the bat. Put the weight there, increase it, what is all this stuff, and then what makes them more consistent. So the cool part is you could test all that. Here's 10 bats. It's a golf club fitting. The guy was a golf club fitter that runs it. He's a really sharp guy. But I'm going to give you I'll give you an example. There was a kid I was working with in New York City, actually, at the baseball center,
Hmm.
and he was using a um whatever 30. He was just getting into high school. I think he was like 14, maybe eighth grade. He was using a 32, and he was a pretty tall kid. He was like 6'1", maybe a 31 or 32. I don't know what it was. Still dropped three. And his bat speed and exit velocity were, I'll just make up numbers. His bat speed was, say, 65, and his exit velocity was, we'll say, 80.
Hmm.
And then he was like, "Oh, I have this other bat, Jake, and it was wood. It was a wood bat. The other one was metal. And it was an inch longer and an ounce and a half heavier." I was like, "Well, that's cool. Let's strap." So we strapped on the blast, and then whatever. So his bat speed was actually a mile an hour less,
Hmm.
but he was hitting the ball 3 to 4 miles an hour harder because the bat had more leverage and more whip. But even though it considered the bat speed less because they're using an algorithm, and let's be honest, the sensor is at the knob. Okay, so the sensor isn't in the middle of the barrel. It's not in the middle of the sweet spot. So it's using an algorithm. Well, if the knob moves this fast, then the barrel's going to move this fast based on how long it is. Okay. So by getting that player to swing a heavier bat, he actually hit the ball harder. That's what it's all about. The ball. I don't care what the barrel's doing. How hard are you hitting the ball? Okay. Are you hitting the ball consistently harder? And then we looked at his bat quickness. It was exactly the same. So he was at whatever 0.16 or 0.17, whatever his number was. That didn't change. So the result was, okay, you need to use this bat. You use this bat. It's a little bit longer. You definitely will do that. So we're working. I don't know if I can say this actually.
Well, this
I
is the
think so.
creative part. Now,
I'm
this
going to
is where
say,
it
I
gets
mean,
fun.
it's not. We're working with the Texas A&M University Engineering Department,
All
and
right.
we're trying to put sensors in different places
Okay.
on the bat and the hands, to bring it all together to figure out, what is the best way, because there's so many people out there that are like, just use your body, right? Like Judge, Judge and uh, Richard Shank, right? They're big, body. Like, let's load up that back hip and turn fast and snap, whatever snap in the back hip and the hand and whatever. But it's not like a hand through the zone extension. They're not worried about really staying inside the ball, even though they do. It's more of a turn. It's a fast turn. Okay. So you have people like that, but then you have other people that are like the opposite, that are worried about their hands all the time. would be a Gary Sheffield or somebody like that.
Wasn't
But
that a
a lot of
cue though? Isn't that kind of like
it's
a
a cue,
cue?
right? It's a
You know,
cue. So I'm not going to like Judge is thinking more body. He's not really
right.
thinking, as
But the
much of
hands part, what you
ex-
mentioned, thinking that's kind of like Tony Gwynn used to say that too. Hey, hands, hands, hands.
hands, right?
Right.
And
He used
Judge
to say,
thinks about his hands, I'm
sure.
sure, but it's more like the initial move, right? Their big thing is the initial move with the hands, where a lot of big league players are more with extension out in front, right? Late movement with the hands,
Right.
and so building kinetic energy, and what do we do that? Because you have some. I mean, I look at so much video, right? I consider myself an expert now, Jim. Did we talk about
Don't
this?
say guru because that's
No, 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 no,
banned.
no.
That's
Expert.
a
Like what
yeah,
makes somebody
expert's fine.
what makes somebody an expert in a field?
10,000 hours of practice.
10,000 hours. Did we do the math on this yet? I
We
did it in the
have.
seminar. I
Now,
cracked
I
everybody
also
up.
want to say this too. Another banned saying on this show, trust the process. There's a
Yes.
company out there, a clothing company
Yeah.
that I really like a lot. I love their
Yeah.
clothes. I won't mention them because they're not a sponsor,
Yeah.
but they have a shirt and a headband
Oh,
that says trust the process on it.
yeah. I like that.
I'm not I'm not buying that shirt from that company.
That's
I'll
your
buy the
favorite
other
thing.
stuff. I'm not buying trust the process.
You love the process.
I hate the process. There's no such thing as the process.
So there's also so
If there
anyway,
was, the
the
76ers would have won the NBA championship by
the
now,
joke
but
I
I
was
don't think
trying to make was I've looked at a ton of video, right?
yeah.
I've looked at probably 20,000, 25,000 hours worth of video. And people do different things. And I see little skinny people with great hands that hit the ball really hard and fall far. You look at, think about Hank Aaron would probably be your main example. Like that dude was all hands. Yes, he rotated. Yes, but he was a front foot hands guy. He had really great control of the bat. And, he had a lot of home runs. So why is that? Why is some people create so much hand speed where other people, use their body more? Like what's the best combination of that? So anyway, we're working on a project. We have really smart people working on that at the university with really cool equipment. So that'll be cool when we get the results. It'll be at the end of the semester. We have the graduate students are kind of working on that for us. As far as shirts that I like, though, Jim,
Yeah.
that pertain to that, as you know, you probably don't know what my favorite movie is, but it's The Big Lebowski is my favorite
No,
movie.
I did know
And
that. I didn't know it was your favorite though.
there's a part of the Big Lebowski where Carl Hungus knocks on the door and he says, "I am expert." He's fixing the
Right.
cable. He's fixing the cable. I found a shirt that says, "I am expert," and I want to wear it, and I want to see how many people think I'm a jerk for thinking I'm an expert, or how many people know it's from Carl Hungus in the Big Lebowski.
So there's I saw this on Twitter. There is a certain account, like it's like a bow tied type deal. I don't
Mhm.
know if you've ever seen these things on Twitter or on social media. Anyway,
I'm a
the,
huge, social media expert.
as I've seen. So this guy had a sweatshirt. He was on a podcast. There was a clip of the podcast on this of him on this on Twitter of him on this podcast. It didn't show his face, but it showed his sweatshirt and it had 3 words. And listen to the lady listeners, tune out now if you think this might be a little inappropriate, but I have to say it. It was a sweatshirt. It had 3 little words and it said, "I eat ass." And that was it.
Jeez.
So I think maybe one of us should wear.
No, one of us is not wearing that, Jim. You sick bastard.
I'm not don't call me sick. I'm not the one who wore it. I'm just
Yeah,
the one
but
who
it
saw it. I
triggered
stumbled
something
upon
in
it.
your psyche to say, you know what? I think I'm going to say that on the air.
But it's funny. That's because it's entertainment value for the show.
It's
All
funny.
right. Final point here. Bat speed, bat quickness.
Yeah.
What is the main message? By the way, email us your questions, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com.
No one's
What
going to
is
email
your
anything anymore after that.
what is your main message? I don't care. You know what? Hey, they're all going to spam anyway. Jesus Christ. All the emails I get about how horrible we are. So what is your main message, bat speed, bat quickness today that you want to relay to everybody?
I would say focus on efficiency and bat quickness, especially at younger ages. Don't worry about your bat speed and focus on the ball speed and the ball consistently. Or the ball consistency. I think that's the most important. If you're chasing a number on your blast and it's bat speed, I don't really care.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, I kind of care because, wow, that's cool. And there's some explosiveness there. But if the ball isn't coming off of the bat at an appropriate ratio as your bat speed, then it's useless. Meaning, if you're swinging the bat, if you're a professional player, I think Albert Pujols had average bat speed, right? He was 78 to 82 most of his career, or at least earlier in his career. He had average bat speed, and he would hit the ball, say, 105 to 110 miles an hour. So, say he was 80 miles an hour and hit it 100, right? That's 20. When he barrels it up, he's hitting the ball 20 miles an hour harder than he's swinging. Of course, with today's balls, it might be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but if I have somebody with 80-mile-an-hour bat speed and they only hit the ball consistently, like 92 to 94 miles an hour, then it doesn't match up. Their bat speed is super fast way out in front, but when they're way out in front, they hit the ball off the end of the bat, not the sweet spot. So you have to figure out, where is their sweet spot, where is their contact point, then is the bat speed good. So let's be efficient, let's be quick to the ball, let's have good extension so that we can save our if our timing. If we're 2 or 3 inches early, we can still barrel something. Let's work on that. And then bat speed, let's get in the gym and let's eat right, and let's maximize that that bat speed for our perfect contact point around our front foot.
All right, very good. And again, if you have any questions, email us, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. And if they're good ones, I will get back to you and we will read them on the air and answer those questions, concerns, comments, or whatever. I forgot what the topic was next week, so I guess you'll just have to wait until next week, like me, because I just forgot what it was. I forgot to write it down. What do you got coming up at the lab?
I just got back from the lab, so I'll tell you what I got. I'll tell
Yeah,
you
what do you
I
have
got
on?
going
What do
in
you have on the
Denver.
online academy side?
Yeah, the online. So Denver, I got all my high school players. We're doing like competitive games. The high school season will be underway. They're practicing, so we're doing Sunday games to create a little competition, 4-on-4 games, where we get that machine nasty and we talk a little smack, between innings and get these guys to compete. So we're doing that here. The online academy just exploded because the new year is here and people are like, you know what? It's 2023. We got to better send Jake our videos and see what kind of progress we're making. So, that's kind of what I got going on between those two. But yeah, if you're out there and you want your swing evaluated and you want to get on a plan to get better, EpsteinOnlineAcademy.com is for you. How's that?
So
that was
too.
so bad.
Well, that was so bad, or you're so mad?
Bad.
I heard.
For you.
I don't think it was bad.
Wasn't the best.
I mean, I've heard you deliver things better, but it wasn't terrible. It got the job
that
done.
That was a good way to put it.
Yeah. All right.
You
Next
want to
week,
be your best in 2023.
I was pretty good too. Are you trying for voiceover stuff now?
Yeah.
I know. By the way, I saw this on Instagram. You follow us, by the way, at Jim Tara, at Epstein Hitting on both Twitter and Instagram. I didn't mention that once today. We're having so much fun. But I saw the EA Sports guy. Do you remember the EA Sports guy when he would say EA Sports? It's a game. I saw that on Insta. I saw him on Instagram, and he did
That's
that
so
to somebody next to him, like a fan or whatever, that asked him to do that, and he did it on Instagram. And now I know what he looks like.
How old was the guy? Because I remember that from when I was
50s.
like in high school.
He's like in his 50s.
So they still do EA Sports. It's in the game. That's what I remember.
So. I would think so. I mean, listen, in high school, 2006, 2007, wake up Saturday morning, and if after breakfast, after some baseball stuff, me, I'd go turn on the PlayStation. There's Madden 06, and the first thing you hear, EA Sports. It's great.
That's great.
And then I would try to build my own franchise to win a Super Bowl. And what I would do is I would sign like every single free agent. There was no player development with me.
You
back
were Steve Cohen.
I really was.
You did it, man.
I know. I did. All right. We got to get out of here. Episode 128. We will talk to everybody next week. Thank you for listening and watching. Have a great week.